Welcome to the Piston Fanatic. I'm your host, Dave Dalton, and I'm excited to share my passion and perspective of our Detroit Pistons as we go on this fantastic voyage together. I've been a diehard Piston fan since the days of Dave Bing and Bob Lanier. I've also been the varsity basketball coach of a very successful program in northern Michigan. I want to thank each of you so much for listening. Please subscribe and like. Well, Piston fans, we learned a lot. In the last couple days, we learned a lot about Trajan Langdon and the direction of our team. We made a big trade, and we're going to talk about that and what ramifications that holds and what that tells us. And we made our second round pick, which was a lot higher than what we thought it was going to be. And we're going to talk a lot about Ron Holland and more about his upside and why I think that was a really good pick. So let's get started first with talking about the Bobi Klintman. So we drafted Bobi Klintman, but we made a trade to get that pick. So we were scheduled to get the 53rd pick in the second round, but we moved up by using our cap space, and we only had to use 1.4 million out of our $65 million worth of cap space. So we got to trade from the 53rd pick all the way up to the 37th pick, which obviously you're going to get a lot better player there, and we did. And so all we had to do is take on Wendell Moore's contract, which is only $1.4 million. But here's the thing. All these teams, like Minnesota, they are so desperate to get off money. So not only they get off the 1.4 million, and they traded us Wendell Moore. He's probably not going to ever be any player, and we probably can just cut him if we want. But he was a first round draft pick 2 years ago, and they also created space because they'll have to pay, if they take the 53rd pick, even they'll have to pay them a lot less than what they would pay the 37th pick. So, Minnesota's in desperate need of saving money. Their salary cap is going to be insane because they just got a lot of big contracts that are just going to be starting to kick in. And so, there's going to be more of these trades. There's going to be more opportunities for our Pistons. And, like today, so Reggie Jackson, our former Piston Reggie Jackson, got traded to Charlotte today for 3 second-round picks. So Denver, they took on Reggie Jackson's contract, Charlotte did, and Denver also sent them 3 second-round picks. And so they're taking advantage of their cap space. And so I'm hoping that we get to make a whole bunch of good big moves, and that's what Trajan said he's going to do. So anyway, Bobi Klintman, I heard there was a lot of buzz last year in the draft. He ended up withdrawing right at the end, but there were people that were high on him last year. He was thought by many procrastinators to be a first round pick this year, and here we got him in the second round. So, but we got our 6'10" guy. I've been wanting. I'm not sure that he'll ever play. I'm not sure how much if he'll ever be a rotation player. I don't know that, but I've wanted to get a 6'10" player and that can shoot. And he shot okay. He didn't shoot great, but he has potential to be a really good shooter. Bobi Klintman is, like I said, he's 6'10". He's got an awesome personality. If you got to listen to him talk, he's a really cool guy. And he's really good at that in transition. He's incredible. You watch the highlights, and he's really good getting downhill. But he shot 36% on three. So anyway, he's just a good player, and so he's rangy and versatile and can do a lot of things. And I'm excited about see what happens. He might play in the G League a bunch this year for all I know, but he is a good pick. Again, 6'10". He's 21 years old. He's originally from Sweden. So, and I don't think I talked about, we make that trip for Wendell Carter. Wendell Carter he's 6'5". He's a guard. He was the 26th pick 2 years ago in the draft out of Duke. So, all right. So Trajan Langdon let us know another thing about his direction. So he drafted for upside. So he is not in this to just win now. And I know a lot of Piston fans, I know a lot of my listeners are tired of losing, and so am I. But he's not going to try to just get us to be a 30-win team or a 35-win team or a 40-win team. He wants us to be great. And so he said Ron Holland has possibly the highest upside of anybody in this draft. And he's not wrong. Ron Holland's 6'8". Again, one reason I wanted Versatle because he was 6'10", and he had potential and he could block shots. But Ron Holland is the guy that has a chance to be an all-star. Am I saying he's going to be an all-star? No, I'm not. He has to be able to shoot. And Trajan said in this press conference after he drafted him, he said, we're counting on Fred Vinson. So Fred Vinson is going to be the MVP of our franchise. He's got a lot of pressure on him. I can tell you that much. He's got to get these guys to shoot good. He's got this reputation to uphold. And I can tell you, I'm a shooting coach. I've been for my whole life, and some guys can get it, and some guys can't. You can work with kids, and you can break it down, and you can show them a progression of how to shoot, and not everybody learns that. So, but I just love, he has this great motor. He just plays his butt off every second of every game, and Trajan said that he has high character, human being. When he was interviewed afterward, and with his skill set, he believes that he has some of the most upside, like I said already, of any player in this draft. Has a leadership piece. He has the competitive high compete piece, and he has the winner piece. So, he liked it that he compared himself in the interview at the Combine to Mikal Bridges and Jaden McDaniels. So those were two great players. And I talked about the player he was most compared to is Jaylen Brown. And just to tell you, Jaylen Brown, his rookie season, here he is, the MVP of the NBA Finals, and he averaged 6 points a game. Jaylen Brown did his rookie season with the Celtics. So that's to say that he's young. He's not. I think he turns 19 in July, so he's 18 years old. So I've talked to this over and over again, how these guys that are freshmen in college, a lot of them take a huge step. Every progression for every player is different, but he has some things that you can't teach. And so, you can Reed Shepherd, but he's 6'1". So all these players in this draft were flawed. They all have something that they're flawed. And his Ron Holland's flaw is he's not a great outside shooter right now. But one of the things is he hardly had any catch and shoot threes because they had nobody to open him up and penetrate and pass it to him. So he was just open for threes. So he's going to get open threes with the Pistons, wide open. So, you give him those threes that Sarr was getting, he's going to, I think, knock down a lot better percentage, especially after Fred Vinson works with him. So we get to see that. And he's going to get a chance. He's a great cutter, but he had way too high of usage at the Overtime Elite because they didn't have a point guard, so he was played like the point guard. I had to laugh. A Piston podcaster who's not that dumb, but he talked about, oh yeah, maybe we will use Ron Holland as a backup for Cade. That's not happening. So, I just get tickled that some people get some unrealistic ideas, but he's going to be not have to do that. So he's not going to have the ball in his hand. So he had to shoot a lot of threes that he shot were off the dribble or step back threes. And he's got, that little between the legs step back three, but he still is going to get a lot better, easier opportunities. He's going to be able to use his energy to cut. He's going to be able to use his energy for offensive rebounds. And I mean, we are going to be a problem on the offensive boards. And with Sarr is so incredible on the offensive boards. Duran is fantastic on the offensive boards. And Ron Holland will be, now that it's hard to get an offensive ball rebound when the ball's in your hand all the time. So I think that's going to happen. But his number one thing is, Trajan said he can defend 1 through 4. And that's a true statement. Is he going to be great at it right away? We talked about this in past years. Rookies are not great on defense. They're just not great. It takes time to develop defensively, and especially when you're 18 or 19. And so we'll see what happens. But Trajan loved it that he compared himself to Jaden McDaniels and Mikal Bridges, because those guys, when they came into the league, those two players, now they're really good players. Bridges is going to get a whole bunch of money. Jaden McDaniels just got paid a boatload of money. Why? Because he plays great defense and he can shoot the three. So, but when they came into the league at first, all they were was defenders. When Mikal Bridges first played for the Suns, they had a lot of talent, and his role was, to score occasionally, but it was primarily to defend. And so that's what he's going to do. And so again, I compared Ron Holland a little bit to Anthony Edwards. I haven't heard that comparison, but Anthony Edwards, freak athlete, we all know that. But just he shot a terrible percentage in college. His percentage, I'm sure it wasn't probably as bad as Ron Holland's, but I think it might have been 29. I should have looked it up before. But anyway, they're all great defensive players. And Trajan also liked his end-to-end speed. He is a blur. And again, when you have elite athletes, it would be fun if we can see Quentin Grimes and Asar Thompson and Ron Holland out there playing defense all at the same time. But I doubt that'll happen because, again, it's going to be even hard to play Ron Holland um, and Asar together. It's going to be real hard to do that, especially if Jern's on the court because that's three non-shooters. But one thing is, I've heard some people suggest that Ron Holland should maybe play some in the G League. Well, he might, but guess what? He played all last year in the G League, so I'm not positive that how much that's going to benefit him. But like I said, he's got you know positional size. That's what Trajan said. He's 6'10" wingspan, and he's a great rebounder for his position. And another thing that we have to talk about is I think I told you before the draft even that my ideal, and I told you last night that my ideal scenario would be for us to have Klintman fall to us at 5 and then trade back. But he came out and addressed that. Trajan mentioned that the Grizzlies, they tried to trade and move back, and they offered us nothing worthwhile. So when we go back to something again, many of my loyal listeners have heard me say this, you have to have somebody that wants something that you have, and they have to be willing to give you something that they have. And it doesn't always happen. The Rockets, they wanted to trade number 3. They were hoping to trade back. They made it known that they wanted to trade back, and they didn't get anybody that was willing to trade back. Nobody wanted to trade back for Klintman. Some people thought he would be picked number 1 or number 2, but obviously everybody, didn't feel that way. So again, I talk about the surprise. I like Salon, and again, Salon and Versatle because they were 6'10", and so that's the only reason I like them. They're not as dynamic, and they don't play with the same force that Ron Holland plays. So I'm happy with the big swing that he took. And I mentioned before, you can say that, and there's a chance he could have fell to like 10 or 12. There, Ron Holland, that could have happened. Some people, John Hollinger had him number 1 on this board. Hollinger's a smart guy, but most people had him much later. The consensus was probably around 10. I'm not sure, but anyway, I'm happy that we got him. I think that he is a great big swing. He can do everything. I think he's shown that he's a better shooter than what Asar. I wasn't for drafting Asar, even though he's one of my favorite players in the NBA to watch. But I wasn't fired up because he was really like an 18% shooter this year in the NBA. And I said he shot bad for the overtime elite against inferior competition when he was open. And everybody think, well, he can work on his shot, but he spent 2 years in overtime elite working all day. It's like that's like their college. And instead of going to class, they went to the gym every day. They had some classes where they talked about nutrition or about how to handle their money or how to handle press. I don't know when they all work on there, but anyway, he had training for shooting for 2 years, and his shot was terrible. I'm going to tell you, last year, I guarantee you that when Fred Vincent gets a hold of him, he's not going to have his left hand behind the ball like he did this past year. I just am flabbergasted. I mentioned before, John Beeline said that the organization did not support him when he was trying to develop players, and so they didn't give the respect to him that they would have, because he really believed that he could have got those guys, including Cade, to shoot even better. So like I said, everybody in this draft class was flawed. So, you could think he should take this place. And what about how, Dalton Connect? I like that guy. I was stunned. The 2 things that were most stunning in this draft is that Zach Edey got picked 9th, which I thought he was the most fascinating person in the draft, and that Dalton Connect fell to 17 to the Lakers, who just drafted Bronny. so everybody saw that coming a mile away. But it was going to tickle me if some team before the 55th pick would take him. So, yeah, like I said, I think that we are in a good position. I'm excited for what's going to happen in this next week. There's going to be trades. I know Trajan's going to be really pursuing every pick that he can get, trade back, take bad contracts for assets, and he's going to do the best he can. I have all the faith in the world in him. as long as he doesn't trade Quentin Grimes. I told you that to the Dallas Mavericks for Tim Hardaway Jr. I'll hate that. So we'll have to see what happens, with free agency. There's only certain players that are available. There's not that many free agents. Again, I wanted Najee Marshall so bad, and now we got all these 6'7" guys, even though Najee Marshall is a 6'7" guy that can shoot, and so can Fontecchio. But we just got to do the best that we can. But again, Trajan is going for the long range, and you don't want to hear that. So my ideal thing, and I'm gonna keep on mentioning this, is that we finish with like the 5th worst record. So we know Washington is in for the major tank, and they're going to bottom out for sure. So there's a couple other teams that are going to. So I hope that we win enough games and finish with the 4th or 5th worst record, and then move up in the draft, which there's a real chance. The odds are really about the same. If you're one of the bottom 4 teams, if you're 4th, your odds are not that much worse than the bottom 3. So I don't want to finish in the bottom 3. I want to try to win, and if we win too many games, so be it. But I just think next year's draft is really good. I think that Trajan's going to let these young players see what they can do one more year, and he's going to add some people. He's going to add some pieces of players, some veterans that can shoot, hopefully. So, but anyway, it's going to be fun. It's going to be a wild ride. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being part of the wild ride with me. I appreciate that. Be the reason that somebody feels good about themselves. Go out of your way to make it happen, and go Pistons.